Welcome to Spirit Journey Collective. I'm your host, Sarah Ty. Get ready for compelling conversations with guests of all walks of life who believe they have found their purpose. Together, we will uncover unique backstories, hearing the raw experiences that led them to the work they are doing today. Let's expand our minds together with the captivating stories and inspiration that awaits. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Spirit Journey Collective. I have a really wonderful guest today. Her name is Geraldine Crane. She's a Serene Spiritual Mentor, and she specializes in helping other women work through mother wounds. And so I'm just so grateful to have you here. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So why don't you share a little bit more to our listeners about what you offer, what you do?
So I call myself a mother wounds mentor. I do work with people around other issues, but because it's my lived experience, that's what I specialize in. So I work with those women who've experienced a toxic or difficult relationship with their mother, which often results in anxiety, low self-worth, people pleasing, believing that they only have worth if they're serving. And so have this real need to fix things for everybody else and attach their worth to that, and it's just helping them to release and start loving and honoring themselves. And the way I do that is I use mentoring and spiritual hypnotherapy to help them connect with their own inner wisdom, their own inner power, connect with the love of the universe, the love of their spirit guides, to really help them to start loving and honoring themselves. And I also use the hypnotherapy to help them with healing inner child. Sometimes there's even past life regression and regression to childhood. But the whole point is to really enable them to really love who they are and start moving forward from that, realizing that actually they will serve the world much better by loving and shining their light than exhausting themselves and trying to fix everything else and putting themselves last. But I also create safe spaces to talk about having a difficult relationship with your mum, because there's a lot of stigma and you can be so vilified if you speak openly about your mum in a negative way. And it makes it very difficult then to actually explore those mother wounds and to heal. So I'm creating those safe spaces where you can come and talk about it, and nobody's going to judge you. There's no competition for who's got the worst mother. It's a safe space to just be and explore and heal, and not focus on mum, but focus on you and how you can move forward.
That is really beautiful work that you're doing. And I think that, I think as children, our relationships with our parents really defines a lot of how we show up in the world. And I can't personally speak from the mother wound end, because fortunately my mother and I are very close, but I'm on the other side of that.
That's
I cannot
beautiful.
speak with my dad. So, there's the flip side. And I know that's, and it was so interesting listening to, the way you're describing how a lot of women struggle with the mother wounds, with the people pleasing and this being of service. And it's very different. I was just thinking about that, like, wow, I can see why needing to specifically work more with someone who knows mother wounds versus father wounds, because they're different. They're, this, like, the acts of service and needing to be selfless isn't necessarily one that comes up on my side. People pleasing, yes, but it doesn't come from like the needing to fill that mother role, if that makes sense. So it's different. And so I think it's just amazing work that you're doing, because whatever side that we're on, hopefully, some listeners, I'm sure, have a beautiful relationship with both parents, and that's the ideal, right?
Oh yeah.
But if you are stuck on the side where you don't have a good relationship with your mother, it's just so good to have that resource. And it sounds like even a community that they could plug into as well to work with you. So I would love to ask from here, what led you here? Was there a difficulty with your own mom, and what was the backstory that helped you find this path?
It's quite a long backstory, but I'll keep it brief. So I became my mum's carer when I was 12 years old. She already had mental health issues, but then developed quite serious physical disabilities, and I became her carer, and we became enmeshed the relationship became very codependent, and she saw me as an extension of her. I would be her confidant. So she would share with me when she had suicidal thoughts. She would share with me her sexual trauma from her past. She would self-harm in front of me and hit herself around the head while I was still there. And I would be the one calming her down, mothering her, and holding that space for her. And by the time I got to 19, I broke down. And I thought at the time that it was the anxiety and depression was because of the pressure of caring for somebody on my own. But it was so much more than that. It was the pressure of that relationship and that enmeshment it just caused me to collapse. And sadly, it took years for me to really come to realize. It wasn't until I became a mother myself, and you start thinking, oh my God, I would never have done this to my children. You know, you suddenly start seeing what it is to be a mother from that side. I started accessing counselling because I wasn't able to breastfeed, and I saw a counsellor and she was like, do you realise you're actually talking about your mum? And she really helped me to start realising. One day she just said to me, why are you not furious with her? Like, you should be furious and you just keep defending her. And that was really good because it was literally like my world turned upside down that day. And I started to realize that everything I thought was true was possibly not, because I was seeing myself, my family, the world through my mother's eyes, and that was very negatively distorted. I'd become isolated from my father, distanced from many of my family. She just put barriers in between, and I had a very harmful understanding of myself. But through that counselling, was able to start putting boundaries in place. But as I did that, the relationship got worse and worse. And then I was a probation officer for many years, worked in substance misuse for a while. And then I went on to work in women's charities supporting women who had experienced domestic abuse. And part of my job was to help them to really understand the extent of that abuse. So you would go through all the different forms that abuse can take, not just sexual and physical, but emotional, psychological, financial, social. And through doing that work, I was suddenly realizing that it was all far too familiar. And things started getting worse and worse and worse with the relationship. At the same time, my daughter was being diagnosed with autism and learning disabilities. So there was a lot going on. And then I lost the job. It was my dream job. I absolutely loved it. And everything went wrong in that workplace. And I lost that job. And my anxiety just skyrocketed. And I was really struggling. And I went back to my counsellor, and she just said to me, you know, we know all this is not just about this job. What would life look like if you didn't have your mum in it? Because by this point, our relationship had become awful, arguing over text messages for hours because I didn't dare talk to her face to face, because there was always that underlying threat that she would hurt herself if I stood up to her. And there was and I was terrified of her, to be quite frank. I was terrified of her. But this counsellor was just, okay, if you're not going to cut contact right now, you need to put more boundaries in place. Christmas was coming up, and I was really struggling because my mother-in-law was going to come up and my mother would be there, and the two did not get on. Mainly because my mother-in-law just could see what was going on, and it just deeply upset her. And they didn't get on. And I was like, well, if there's one person I should be able to ask not to come on Christmas Day, it's my own mother. She'd spent the last Christmas with us. My mother-in-law hadn't. It seemed the fair thing to do. So I got home and I rang her and just asked, could you spend Christmas with somebody else? I can't, I'm not well, I can't cope. She exploded, screaming at me, accusing me of all sorts of things. And at no point was there any consideration what I needed. And it just kind of clicked in my brain. Like, I am never going to get well. I'm never going to recover from this anxiety. I'm never going to be able to be the mother I want to be to my children. Because at that point, I was losing my temper in ways I was not proud of. I can't. It felt like I was swimming in poison and I had to get out. And so I text her and just said, I'm really sorry it's come to this point, but I have no choice anymore. You have to stay away from me and my family. And she has. You know, she's never made any attempt to get in touch with me. I blocked her on email and phone, but, you know, she could have turned up at my door, written a letter. She never has. Whilst that can hurt to a certain extent, it's also a great relief, because that enabled me, that freed me then to go on a really deep healing journey. I went back to my counselor. She helped me let go of any guilt and shame. I trained as a hypnotherapist. I reconnected with a spiritual connection that I'd been developing since I was 19, but I developed hypnotherapy allowed me to connect with it on a whole new level. And the hypnotherapy helped me let go of that terror, that fear of seeing her, but also because it reconnected with my spirituality, that sent me on a path of healing and reconnection. And when lockdown came, I stopped working and I just meditated for 2 hours every morning to get myself in the best place I could be to look after my children in lockdown. And through that, spirit came in full throttle and I reconnected with them. And since then, they've got very much involved with my work. So I started to realize that the power in using hypnotherapy to help my clients to connect with their spirit guides. Because if you've had a toxic or a difficult relationship with any parent, to be honest, you may not have experienced unconditional love. And when you connect with your spirit guides, with that inner divinity within you, the love there is incredible. I did a beautiful session with a client the other day where her spirit guide came forward, and this is not a woman who cries easily. There was so many tears. It was so beautiful. The love that was there cannot help but heal. And then I've kind of expanded my work into doing inner child healing work. And I still do card readings and all that kind of work, and mentoring people through different spiritual understandings, different spiritual teachers, Louise Hay, Wayne Dyer, Abraham Hicks, Michael Singer, Eckhart Tolle. I use all those teachings to help them to really start loving and honoring themselves, to find stillness, to connect with themselves, to get present and find peace. And that's my goal, because that's what I've been able to bring to myself. Not all the time, but it's there and it's always underpinning everything.
Wow, what an incredible story. I mean, you really went through the trenches before you're able to make it to where you are now. And that's pretty common. That's what they call the hero's journey, right? And now you're in this place where you get to help other women find the light in a way that you probably wish you had back when you were going through it.
Mm.
And I love backstories because then you can kind of see how it was supposed to land this way. You're supposed to take this journey to find where you are now. And I'm so sorry that you experienced that with your mother, but it sounds like you finally found the peace that you haven't had before.
Absolutely. And that, lots of people talk about happiness, but I actually think peace needs to be the goal. Happiness can come and go in a second. Peace can underlie everything. I'm facing a lot of challenges myself. I was very recently diagnosed with breast cancer. It's not invasive. It's once I have a mastectomy, I should be absolutely fine. So in many ways, I'm lucky, but it's not an easy thing to go through. But having these tools that I've got from that healing journey, having that spiritual connection, is proving absolutely invaluable. It doesn't mean I haven't cried. It means I can cry, and I cry openly, and I allow myself to feel the feelings. I am allowing myself to go through the different steps, but I'm also prioritizing myself and taking care of myself and knowing there is probably a purpose to this somewhere. I'm not sure what that is yet, but I have faith, and I know that I will grow and only get stronger from this experience. And I know it will help me help other women even more. And whilst I'm not yet at the point of being grateful for having my breast removed, I'm at peace with it. It's taken me a while, but I only got the diagnosis a few weeks ago. It's not taken me months, it's taken me weeks. And I'll probably talk to me in a couple of days and I might be back in not being at peace with it. And I accept that. But it's the tools that this has given me are just incredible. And I'm still expanding on them. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. I haven't got it all sorted. But I do know that I can help, and I do help people. And it's really beautiful. So in some ways, whilst I might not be grateful for that's going on right now, there's many things I am grateful to my mother for. And even some of the difficult things that we went to, because I will fully admit my mum was not bad all the time. Like, I've worked with women whose mothers just blow your mind. My mum could be affectionate, she could be fun and really silly, but in some ways, that I always try and work with women to understand that we don't compare mother wounds. We all experience this differently, and your mother does not have to have been deeply abusive and deeply neglectful to have caused real harm. She kind of, provided for you beautifully. She may even have been affectionate, but for me, it was that deep enmeshment where I just couldn't breathe. But, she taught me, she was the one who introduced me to Louise Hay. She was the one who introduced me to meditation. She was the one who introduced me to caring about the planet, so there's so much I am grateful to her for, but I really appreciate now the space, because that's what I needed.
Yeah, I mean, especially with going through what you're going through right now with the diagnosis. I mean, I can't imagine trying to take that journey on while also having to deal with the turbulence of your mom's relationship. So,
Mm.
I mean, it's so funny when you think about things in hindsight. It's like almost like you're now prepared to think you made the decisions that in hindsight you're like, oh, okay, this is giving me that peace that I need to fight this.
So I do think, had she still been in my life going through this, it would have been about her. And she may be making, I mean, I assume she probably knows, because I've not been private about it. It's all over my social media, because that's who I am. I share what I'm going through as I'm going through to help other people. It's just, and it's not a woe is me, and it's not a please give me sympathy, nor is it, look what I can do. You should be able to. It's not about that. It's just, it's sharing that we're all human and we're all dealing with stuff.
Right.
And gives people the opportunity to speak openly too. If I can speak openly about stuff, that gives other people permission. So I've no doubt that she knows, and how she's responding and dealing with that, I don't know, but that's not my concern. My concern is me and my children and my husband, and getting healthy and strong, and actually getting everything positive out of this I can.
It's a beautiful lens to look through in such a difficult situation. And really that's the best way to do it. It's putting yourself back in that empowerment of, well, it is what it is. So now what can I do with it? Instead of, going to the woe is me, which you would have every right to. I think that,
Oh
it would be
yeah.
totally valid. But also it's like, if you have to do that, you have to like give yourself a time frame, or understand that there is going to be certain times where you're going to allow this, but it's not going to become your life. Like being able to feel your feelings. Also, like, I'm not going to get stuck in this disempowerment feeling. So, I mean, and I completely understand what you're sharing, how you're speaking to sharing on social media. It's not about any of the things you said. It's basically sharing your story and your journey, which is going to help other women who are in that same situation and now are like, okay, well, I'm not alone. There's someone else here who's,
Exactly.
going through this too. I do have a question. Does your mom know about the work that you do now? Like, is that something that you're pretty sure she's aware of?
She must be. I know there's been certain friends of hers have been following. I had one troll me recently, and I don't doubt that she has, through other people's accounts. She's blocked on all my stuff, but she'll have other ways of doing it. And I do podcasts all over the place, and they're completely public. I've written a book proposal that is with the publishers at the minute. I'm hoping it's a competition that's entered, and I'm hoping to get that book out there. I really struggled with it at first, of what's she going to think, and I had hypnotherapy on it, and released that, and it's my story to share. And I had one friend say, well, if she didn't want you to tell everybody about it, she should have treated you better in the first place. Which I get that. I get that. But this, for me, is more about like the book that I'm writing is a little bit about mum and understanding, but most of it's about how you can heal. It's really teaching. It's called The Serene Way, is the model that I follow to help people heal. And it's delivering that in a book. I do it as a group program, but it's delivering it in a book. And it's about that. It's about helping women heal. Because when I cut contact with her, it was possibly the loneliest time of my life. Especially because we've been so deeply enmeshed, I felt like my roots and my anchors has just gone. I still had contact with my dad, but because I'd been isolated from him and his wife for so long, especially emotionally, he couldn't replace that, He tried, bless him. He was there for me, but I just felt anchorless and lost and was bouncing between every emotion you can imagine, from guilt to joy to relief to anger. And I felt so alone in it because nobody else really understood around. Luckily, most of the people around me have lovely relationships with their mothers. Since then, however, I've met hundreds of women who haven't. And I think it's important that we speak openly about this because those women need to know they're not broken and they don't need fixing. They just need to love themselves. But you need that safe space with somebody who knows how to do that and how to help you through that. And you need to be around women who, and if it's men, around men that get it, around that community, whatever gender you are. It's very important to have somebody show you you're not alone. And I just don't want anybody to ever feel as alone as I did.
Yeah. It's really good that your focus is on healing. It's not about, you're not trying to like put your mom out or try and like, showcase what she did to you. Like, look, this is what she did. It's not about that. She might be experiencing that from that perspective, but that's not you're doing this as a way of saying, like you said, you're not alone. This is my story. It might sound similar to yours, but here are some healing techniques to help you find the piece that I did. And so, and also it's possible that your mom could be going on her own healing journey through being kind of pushed in that direction. That's kind of the best case scenario, right? Kind of,
I just don't focus on her. I can't focus on her. I can't fix her. Only she can heal herself. I think often mothers in these cases are narcissistic or emotionally immature, and especially those who are narcissistic, it's very unlikely they're going to do that. It's really, really difficult because of the way their brains work for them to do that work. And if we stay focused on them, on why they behave that way, on, are they going to change? How could they change? And having these fantasies of what they could be if they just, let go of fear. You can't stay focused there. It's useful to know a little bit about the why, or understanding different causes for this kind of thing, because that frees you to see that it's not your fault, because it never is. The treatment is not your fault, but your responsibility is to heal the wounds, and it's only you can do that. And it's hard work. You need to be focused on you, not on them. And allowing you to accept you can't change them, accept it's not your fault, but accept that you have the responsibility to heal and you have the power to heal. That acceptance, and I don't focus on forgiveness ever. I focus on acceptance, because acceptance is what will free you to move forward. And if forgiveness comes in time, great. And if it doesn't, that's okay too.
It's time to take a short break from our wonderful speaker. Are you in the need of guidance around love, career, family, life, or purpose? Embark on a spiritual journey inward with an intuitive tarot reading. Depending on what you're needing and looking for, I offer private one-on-one sessions as well as personalized email readings. It doesn't matter what the question is. A reading with me provides connection with your higher self, offering curated personal messages, or what I like to refer to as spiritual roadmaps, guiding you to the future outcome you desire. Readings are insightful and affordable. If you'd like more information or to schedule a reading with me, please see the link below.
Yeah. And forgiveness is usually more about you anyway than the other person.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people don't see it, like don't realize that it's actually about you releasing. I can completely relate, again, not from the mother wound, but from the father wound side of it, because I had no contact with my father for several years. And it's one of those things where it's like, there's a small part of me that hopes that he'll find some kind of peace, because right now he's just, for him, it's alcoholism and belligerence and just things I don't want to get involved with. But, you know, I know at this point he's slowly killing himself through the alcoholism. And so all I can really do is hope that he finds his way. It doesn't mean I'm going to let him back in my life, but it's one of those, hope you find your peace.
Yeah.
But I can't, like you said, I can't focus on what he's doing. I have my own life. I have my own healing, which I've also, you know, that's so important, taking the time to heal. So yeah, it's beautiful that that's what you're trying to put out there and helping other women find that. So in the work that you're doing with working with other women and writing your book and the community and everything else, do you feel like you found your purpose and life mission?
Oh yeah. It's funny. I started my business a few years ago, and I initially started as a clinical hypnotherapist. I did kind of specialize in toxic relationships, having, you know, done a lot of domestic abuse work before that. But I didn't bring spirit in at all. I was really worried about the, you know, turning people away. But because of during lockdown, I got so many spiritual messages coming through of reassurance. I was sharing them on the line, and the response I was getting was amazing. And then it just kind of grew from there. The whole way of working really expanded into the spiritual. And then last summer, I at this point wasn't specializing in mother wounds, especially. I seemed to draw a lot of people like that in, but I wasn't marketing myself that way. Then last summer, I had certain videos just go. I had one that went semi-viral and others that have done really, really well. And the ones that got the most interaction and the conversation and connection was all around mother wounds. And that was when I suddenly started realizing, this is what I do. This is what I specialize in. And it was last year that I worked all year on developing my Serene Way program, which takes you through understanding the mother wounds and why she behaves that way, and helping you to really accept. And then the whole of the program is focused on the individual. So we go through stillness. It follows the acronym of Serene. We go through emotions, working with them. We go through reconnection, which is reconnecting with yourself rather than who you've been told you are, but also reconnecting spiritually with your own inner divinity and your inner power. And then looking at energy, how we're energetic beings, how you protect your energy and how you can get in flow and in alignment with yourself. Then looking at now, and that's about getting very much in the present moment, because you can't feel your clarity and your inner wisdom if you're not being present, if you're always going into the past or worrying about the future. And then we look at empowerment, and that's how you can just keep really loving and honoring yourself. And intertwined in that is inner child work as well. But I developed that all last year, and it just all felt so right. It was a real culmination of things. But at the same time, I was still teaching a spiritual development course, helping people just to connect with their spirit guides. But the space in which I saw people progress the most were the ones who did both. They did that group program and they did the spiritual connection. So now I've put it all into one program, because I realized that's the way I help people heal mother wounds, is by connecting with the love of the universe. And so it all combines together. And yeah, I just feel like, you know, even my spiritual development journey that I've been on since I was 19, everything, my career as a probation officer, my work in substance misuse, because if you've ever been in any toxic relationship, you'll know that addiction and toxic relationships have a lot in common. And so everything I've done, everything has prepared me to be right here and doing what I'm doing right now. And I absolutely love what I do, and I'm good at it, which is so nice to feel that I'm good at this. you know, and it's really beautiful to be able to really see the women I work with start really loving and honoring and holding boundaries. I never promise that, you know, we'll have it all healed and it'll all be perfect. These wounds run deep, and it's a long, long journey, and it's very up and down roller coaster. But you can get the tools to go through and survive and thrive through that.
I love that though. It really, this position that you've created for yourself was meant for you, is really what it sounds like. And I love looking backwards. That's one of my favorite things about backstories, is when you can see all the different things that you were called into first, because you weren't ready for this work back then. You know, you didn't even realize, like you said, you didn't even realize how abusive that your relationship with your mom was until you had to learn it the way you did in order to probably see it from that subjective or objective place of like, well, hold on a second, you know, but you had to go through all these steps. And then now you've really just through, and I love the spiritual aspect that you've put into it, because I think a lot of personal development courses and things like that is amazing. But the one thing that I've learned through my own spirituality is you have to have that spiritual piece, mind, body, soul. There's a reason those are all three go together. You know, the mind, the personal development, the body is obviously like how you connect with your body and be present, right? And then the soul is that spiritual aspect. And so I know for me personally, just like it sounds like it was for you, connecting with my spiritual practices and my spiritual beliefs really just shifted this whole idea of, first of all, it made me help me understand that I'm not alone. Like that was a big one, that there was something bigger than me that was rooting for me, you know?
Yeah.
And that was like a game changer, because then it was like, okay, so now that I understand that, now I understand that I'm not alone, and there's things that are opening for me if I look for it, you know, and helping me through this. And then there's this understanding of these difficult life lessons I've gone through have only served to help me be better. And that has also helped me release so much of that trauma, you know. And there's obviously, like you said, releasing trauma and healing is a lifelong journey, most of the time, especially when it's so ingrained in you. But when you're able to see it from that acceptance place, like you said, it's more of a, okay, I can't change it, it sucks. This is how I'd read the justice card in tarot. That's what it's all about. This sucks, this is a difficult situation, but you have two options. You can either stew in it and just basically go over and over how unfair it was and be stuck there, or you could accept it and then find a way to move forward. And so, yeah, it sounds like it's just really helpful work that you're doing, creating this program to help women really rediscover themselves. And I think another piece of that too is a lot of society doesn't want us listening to ourselves, especially women.
Yeah.
We're really taught to look outward and not inward. And more spiritual work to help women look inward and heal, I'm like all about it.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got it all there within us. But yeah, and if you've been in any kind of toxic relationship, that person will not want you connected to your inner divinity, your inner wisdom, your intuition. They will not want you connected to that power at all, because that's a threat to them. And that's why they will keep you anxious, keep your mind busy, keep your body exhausted, because they do not want you connected to that. Whether they know they're consciously doing it or subconsciously is of little matter. It's knowing that to empower yourself, you need to be connected to that.
And specifically with narcissism, it's this idea that they're so deeply insecure, but they're not seeing it or looking at it. They're looking at everyone else to make them feel better. So it's more so they don't want you to find your power, because then where would you be for them?
They need you for supply, narcissistic supply. They need that supply from you. And if you are focused on yourself and taking care of yourself and not stroking their ego or being their crutch, then you're not supply to them anymore. And that's when they can turn nasty.
Yeah.
So quite often I always say to people, if you've put healthy boundaries in place and it's making things worse, that's not an indication to pull back on the boundaries. That's an indication to go firmer, because it's showing you that this is not healthy. Because somebody who really loves and honors you, you put boundaries up, they respect them.
I started my boundary work 4 years ago. So like right around maybe 5 years ago. And I remember the first time my therapist, it was a toxic relationship, and my therapist brought up boundaries. And I heard boundaries and I heard ultimatum and I heard black and white. And I was like, I can't do that, and then that's when I started learning, oh no, boundaries, it is firm and resolute because it needs to be, but it's not from a you do this or else, because I think that's how I thought it was. And some people still think it's that. It's not about controlling the other person. It's about deciding how you want to be treated and making that. And then, like you said, those that really want to be in your life and really care about how you're feeling, they're gonna, if you say, hey, this situation really impacted me in this way and it's not okay, someone who's safe is going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I had no idea. And they, would work on changing that, versus someone who really benefited from you not having boundaries. Now you're taking away their access to you. And then there's that resentment and backfire. And yeah, and it can be really confusing when you are enmeshed and you are codependent, and then you think you're the problem. And no.
Yeah. And you're shamed, made to feel guilty for, made to feel like a bad daughter for just wanting some space, for just wanting to be, wanting to have that space. I always say any mother can cause their child harm. I know there is things I have done wrong with my children, but what makes that relationship toxic is not the harm itself. It's the unwillingness to admit any harm has been caused, to acknowledge that harm. It's the unwillingness to take any responsibility for it. It's the not willing to give them space to heal from it or to try and change their behavior in any way to help you. That's when the relationship becomes toxic. And that's when you have to get firm with boundaries, because they're not going to do it. You have to do it.
Yeah, I relate to that because I'm also a mom to an 8-year-old, but repair is so important. And I mean, I will say a lot of the boomers, right, the older generations, like they weren't taught to repair. They were really just taught to just hand out punishments and discipline, and then they're like they never talked about their side, and so that probably plays a role in some of the older generations. But that's important though, is being able to acknowledge, like with my own daughter, when I've gone off the rails, and and I'm like, oh man, I don't like how that made me feel, and I'll just go back and talk to her and be like, hey, the way you did, this isn't off the table, this isn't okay, but the way that I responded wasn't okay either. We have that conversation. And yeah, it's being able to acknowledge that you're human, right? And that's, unfortunately, especially when we're talking about narcissistic people with that disorder, they're going to do everything they can not to acknowledge any wrongdoing, because that would acknowledge that they're not perfect, which would really tap into that inner insecurity that's buried at their core. So what is one common struggle that you see along women that you've worked with, that that you see kind of over and over again, and what's some advice that you would offer for that, for any listeners who may not be working with you yet but are in a similar situation, and what kind of advice would you have for them?
Pretty much all the women I work with have issues around always putting themselves last. Now, you can get some women I work with who've had an experience of having a very cold mother. They can be quite hyper independent. And so theirs can be a little bit different to women who've had deeply enmeshed mothers like I have. However, I always see with all the women I work with issues around self-worth, issues around anxiety, and this feeling a responsibility for other people's emotions, feeling a responsibility to fix things for other people. And with the hyper independence, there's that not being able to accept help from other people because you don't want to be a burden on anyone. And also there can be a lot of trust issues, can be trust around not feeling like you can trust anyone else to actually be there for you. And that can be a really deep one, especially if the mother has been really abusive. That can be a massive issue. But it can also be an issue around you actually trusting your own judgment. If you've not been allowed to have your own opinion, if you've been criticized for expressing yourself or having your own identity in any way, then that can mean you stop really knowing yourself and knowing your own opinions and trusting your own judgment. And that's when you can be very indecisive and constantly, needing other people to reassure you that you've made the right decision here, or you bought the right car, you bought the right dress, you're doing the right job. It impacts every area of your life when you've got mother wounds. It really penetrates so deep into all areas, and really can penetrate deep into other relationships in your life. You can attract other toxic people, friendships, workplace, partner into your life, or it can impact on how you are able to parent. If you've not been modeled good parenting, though most of the women I work with are amazing parents, they're amazing mothers doing incredible things, they're healing their wounds and they're doing incredible, but they can spot things coming up in themselves that are affecting their ability to parent the way they want to and the way they know they can. So it's hard to pinpoint to one, but it's this all-pervading thing of I am not enough and I need to be serving others to have worth. And the real key to healing that is self-love. It's getting really still, really connecting with yourself, seeing those emotions, seeing those thoughts and not getting absorbed by them, and being able to reconnect with yourself and really bringing that love in, because that's, self-love is about bringing yourself the tenderness, kindness, and patience that you do to anybody you love, but bringing yourself that. It's not about thinking you're the best thing ever. It's not about arrogance. It's about giving yourself the time, the patience, compassion, tenderness that you would give anybody else you cared about. And that's the key.
I love that. That is such beautiful advice. And yeah, I find it so fascinating. I think that as like a whole in humanity, self-love and self-worth is like the underlying issue for everything. I mean, in all areas of healing, that's like whether it's mother wounds, father wounds, whatever it is, self-worth and feeling enough is like almost the core of everything. But self-love is almost always the remedy for finding your way in that, which I'm so glad that that's coming around more and talked about more, because 10 years ago, this wasn't really talked about a lot. You know what I mean? 20 years ago, it was almost never even, unless you were like in a small niche of a community, right? That's self-love been misconstrued as being selfish. And now I think as a society, people are realizing like, oh no, this is more about just taking care of myself and honoring myself. And I'm worthy of that. And, it's so funny because this idea of like, oh, I'll take care of everyone else. Well, if everyone is busy taking care of everyone else, when do you get taken care of?
Yeah.
Like it's in my tarot, when I do readings, one of the things, the analogies that I use is talking about working from an empty cup versus a full cup.
Of course.
Capacity is a cup of water. And so, you can't give from an empty cup. And even if you tried, you're not giving anything of quality. You know what I mean? You want to be able to give and give quality. So when you're able to first fill your own cup, especially ideally to the point where you're overflowing, then you're able to give and you're okay. Like you don't need to take from your own reserves.
Yeah, the way I describe it is, and I'll show you, I always have a little prop with me. So if you're listening to this, I'm very sorry, but I'm holding a lighthouse. And I always tell people to be the lighthouse. And the reason for that is if you really want to serve the world, and the best way you can help other people and your loved ones is to have really firm foundations. So that groundwork, the basement of your lighthouse is really strong. You know who you are, you know your worth. And then you have really strong walls. You have good boundaries physically, spiritually, and emotionally. You take care of your energy. And when you take care of your energy, you're not giving it away to people who do not deserve to take your energy. Your light shines really bright. And when your light shines really bright, everybody benefits. All the other boats can find their own way home and hopefully create their own lighthouse. But what a lot of highly sensitive, deeply empathic women that I work with do is they try and get into everybody else's boats. They feel responsible. They have this identity of I need to fix and rescue, because that's, what kept them safe a lot of the time when they were younger, or what they had to do for themselves. And so they're getting in everybody else's boats and steering their boats. What that ends up doing is disempowering the person in their boat from learning their own lessons and doing what they came here to do. It means you're probably steering them in the wrong direction because you're following your inner wisdom and they're not following theirs. But, and after you're probably not even following your inner wisdom, you're just following your mind. But when you instead are shining your light, if you're driving the boat, that light is going to get dim. That light is going to dim fast, and then that really doesn't benefit anyone. So get out of the boats, keep your foundation strong, your boundaries firm, shine your light, and that's what will really benefit everybody. Everybody, your loved ones, but the world will benefit when you're shining your light as bright as you can.
I really love that analogy. That is just beautiful. And it's so relevant too, because when you're in your own power, right, which is when you're in the lighthouse, you have the firm boundaries, you have the firm foundation, you're being authentic. At that point, you become a beacon, right? You become that light on the path for others. And it's not that, like you said, you're not getting the boat and guiding them and telling them where to, you're not driving the boat for them or whatever. You're shining your light in the sense of this is my wisdom, this is my knowledge, and those that are meant to learn from you will be drawn to you naturally. Okay. You don't have to step outside of your bounds to help them. You're just doing what you do best. And so I love that. It speaks to authenticity, but it also speaks to having a firm sense of self and really just like rooted in place. And it reminds me a little bit of this meme that says how to light up the world. And it's just you being lit up, and then people around you start getting lit up. It just happens organically when you're on fire, when your soul's on fire and you're doing what you love and you're living an authentic life in alignment. You just really impact others in a positive way without even having to like force it. It just happens.
Yeah, it does. It ripples. It really does ripple. The best thing you can do for the world is heal and love yourself. You know, we can look at some of the most awful things that are going on in the world, but you are not serving them by drowning. You know, you serve them by shining your light, lifting the consciousness of the world, bringing more kindness, compassion, and love into the world. That's the best way you can serve. And then from that point, you may be inspired to take certain action, but it will be based in love and clarity and peace, and that action will have a much better impact.
Yeah, I love that. So from here, I'd love to shift to what I like to call synchronicity story time. And I love synchronicity stories. I think that it's just a great way to remind ourselves we're not alone down here. There's a higher power that's guiding us. And have any stories of serendipity or things just falling into place uncannily, perfectly, you know, that you could share with us?
It's funny, I was trying to think, because I've been working spiritually for so long, since I was 19. There is so many people I've connected with who've had a deep impact, and I don't even know how I met them. I have no idea how we encountered each other. It's just that we've just drawn to each other. There's been people I've met and like, I know you, I've known you before. So I could go on all day, but one of the things that really popped into my mind when I was thinking about this question was a couple of years ago, I was meditating. And when I meditate, I either go to my own inner walled garden and spend time with my spirit guides, or I go down onto a beach. And that's when I'm connecting with other people's guides and invite other energies in. And my guide guided me down to this beach during this meditation, and I'm sitting on this blanket, and suddenly Dr. Wayne Dyer comes and sits next to me. Now, if you don't know who Dr. Wayne Dyer is, please go and find him. His work was amazing. But he has been somebody who inspired me for many, many years. So for him to be sitting here with me on this blanket was just like, what? No. And I was also joined by another spiritual teacher called Sid Banks, who he inspired and brought forward a 3 principles spiritual understanding, which is again something that's very worth going and exploring. And I'm blown away. I've got these 2 big spiritual teachers who I've read and learned so much about, and they're right next to me. And I'm thinking, no, this can't be true. This has got to be my ego. There's something going on. And 2 days later, I'm reading Gabby Bernstein's book, Super Attractor, which is a wonderful book. And she speaks to Wayne Dyer coming to her in a meditation. And she's the same, like, nope, no, this can't be true. She, however, is really good friends with his daughters and talks to them about it, and then decides to go and see a medium that they all know. And this medium brings Wayne forward and he says, I will be coming to lots of people. Anybody who is sharing the same teachings of love that I taught, I will be coming to. And it was just, there was just no way I could deny it at this point. Like, this was 2 days after the experience. And I'm like, okay, all right, I take it now. Wayne's there and he's working, and I felt his energy come through numerous times since then, and I'm so grateful for it. It's such a beautiful energy, and it really has touched me. And he also gives me a little kick up the bum when it comes to my writing, and it's, yeah, it's beautiful. And it is that there is so much more going on here, so much more you can tap into.
That's so cool. You were like completely like, I don't know if I believe that. I know I've been there with my own meditations when I have certain, not necessarily, I haven't had anyone like that come to me, but just when I've connected with certain guides and stuff, there's always that part of me that's like, oh, is this just in my head? You know what I mean?
You do question
And
yourself.
yeah. And so for you, it was like, well, this is a real person. This isn't even just like someone else that I'm making up, or this is like a real person who actually lived. Like, could you really be coming to me? And then 2 days later, you had that confirmation. And that was by accident, right? Like when things land perfectly like that, it's in that realm of, it's not like you were looking for the confirmation probably either. It just was like, oh my God, here it is.
I was listening to it on audiobook as I'm walking my dog around the woods, and I was laughing out loud, just like, oh my God, all right, I'm listening. All right, you got me. And there's been so many times things like that have happened, and I'm just like, okay, I'm listening.
I can't tell you how many times I've done that too. And you have to laugh because it's just like, what is happening right now?
Yeah, and it's wonderful. It's beautiful. It's so lovely when it happens. I was at yoga the other week, and I'm suddenly getting images in my head of Wayne Dyer doing yoga, because there's a film he did called The Shift, and he lets the film crew show him doing yoga in this thing, and I'm getting this image going around in my head. Why am I getting this image? And hi Wayne. I realized he was with me, and that's why I was getting that. He's doing, I'm here. All right, thank you. And I'm so grateful to him. I'm very grateful to his daughters as well. They wrote a beautiful book called The Knowing, which was how his spiritual approach and teaching and what he brought to them as a father, how that helped them in their healing when he'd passed. And they made his teachings so accessible, so understandable, so current, and such a beautiful book.
I'll have to check that out. I'm not sure if I've read his book. I definitely know of him, but I don't know like him that well.
There's an interview between him and he interviews Abraham Hicks through Esther, and that's co-creating at its best. That's wonderful. And one of the last books he wrote was I Can See Clearly Now, and I love that because it kind of encompasses everything that he's learned along the way. And his energy is beautiful.
Yeah, love that. So from here, I would love to ask the question I ask everyone. This is my final question that I like to end the show with. Do you believe that we all have a purpose and a life mission here on Earth?
Yes. I don't think we all have this major purpose to come and change the world. I think our purpose in life is to learn, to grow, and to love yourself. That for some people can just being a mother, and I say just, that is no just with being a mother. It's the hardest job going. It can be just being yourself and expressing yourself, not having children, and just living life the way you want to live it. Going off and living in a camper van. That may be your mission. That may be your purpose. It doesn't have to be a big purpose to change and impact other people's lives. It can be just to live life to the truest you. To me, that's the purpose. Some people, yes, have had bigger missions. I kind of think of life as like a computer game. We all have an avatar, that's our bodies and our mind, and we all have a mission. There is certain challenges that we've chosen to face through this life, through our computer game. The end goal is self-love, is to really love and honor ourselves. And the challenges are there to really challenge that ability, because if life was easy, it's really easy to love yourself, but we don't learn anything on us as a soul level, so we're given those challenges. But we may be playing on the same platform, but everybody's playing a different game. Their mission and your mission may be completely different, and that's okay. Just let them get on with theirs and I'll get on with mine.
Yeah, I agree with that mostly, because I think that knowing the self and self-love and all of that is 100% while we're here. And it's learning through all the obstacles, right? Of all the things that got in the way of us loving ourselves. It's like my definition of purpose is, I feel like it's a two thing. On one hand, it's, finding the thing that lights us up, which could be getting in a camper van and traveling, or being, that shows up in so many different ways, but it's just the thing that we just, and I think when you're you and you're authentic, like that in and of itself is lighting you up, right? Because you don't have to try and be someone you're not. Yes. So I 100% agree with that portion. And then I do think that there's an aspect of giving back to the world in some way as the other piece of the purpose. But again, if you are living and if you're able to reach a place of alignment where you're in self-love and all of that, then you're going to be such a great example for other people in that same way.
That will give to the world anyway.
Exactly. So it's like either way, the whole purpose is really just to know yourself, love yourself. Through that, you're going to connect better with others, because one of the biggest things that stops us from really connecting with others is our own shame, our own insecurities, our own issues that makes it feel like we can't connect. But it's like, no, once you know that you are safe and you're good, connection with other people becomes easy. Now there might be people who are like, oh, we just don't vibe. Our energy just doesn't go well together. Wish you well, you know what I mean? But we're just not a good fit. But that doesn't affect your worthiness, and it doesn't affect their worthiness either. You know what I mean? But it's just, once you kind of know yourself, then you attract the people you're meant to attract. You impact people without even really trying, because you're just
exactly.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to work with you, especially in the mother wound niche, how can they find you?
Really easy to find me. My website is just www.geraldinecrane.com. So generally, if you Google Geraldine Crane, I will come up. I'm on Facebook, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, and it's TikTok and Facebook, it's just Geraldine Crane. Instagram, it's Geraldine Crane _Serene. So you can find me, I'm there. But if you want to email me direct, I welcome you to do that. It's hello@geraldinecrane.com.
Perfect. I'll go ahead and put all those links in the show notes, so anyone that wants to work with you can find you easy and quickly. And that's just been such a good conversation. I haven't had a chance to talk to anyone yet who specifically works with mother wounds. I've had someone on who talked about parent estrangement, which is kind of all across the board, but this one is more of a specific niche that, it needs to be talked about for those that need to know where they can go so they're not alone and they can heal.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story and sharing what you offer.
Thank you so much. This has been a beautiful conversation.
Thank you for joining me on another inspiring episode. Remember, your purpose is a unique and unfolding path. I hope these conversations have ignited a spark within you. Until next time, keep exploring, growing, and embracing the beautiful adventure of connecting with your purpose. Stay tuned for more meaningful conversations. If you enjoyed the episode today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for joining me on this journey.